This content is for informational and educational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever by Draper Gorin Blockchain, aka DGB, the presenter, or other associated parties for the content being provided. Please do your own due diligence and seek proper counsel.
Boom. Welcome. DGB, crypto, blockchain, whatever, family hang number 43. I think when we started, we joked about how we weren't going to name it, and then like every week it would change and it was a joke. But now we're just a few 43 weeks in. So, you know, what the heck. But excited to be here. Hope everyone's doing good. Tuesday morning, October 15th. It looks like Bitcoin is doing a thing that people are excited about. We'll talk about, you know, all sorts of things, but I'm excited to have Alex back. Wait, we've had calls and stuff and hung at different times, but is this your first time on the live stream, at least since we restarted?
I'm going to say yes because David is nodding as though he knows the source. So I'm going to say absolutely, that's definitely true.
So I think
so. Awesome. Sweet. Welcome to the DGB family hang. If for people who are new or people who are watching on one of the streams or not live, DGB is an early stage VC firm focused primarily on the blockchain crypto space. We are early stage in ventures, a venture approach. We're not buying liquid tokens and trading them and doing the crypto hedge fund thing. We're early stage venture investors. If you're an investor or an entrepreneur, you want to get involved, meet with us, go to dgb.vc. You should sign up there anyway if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, so you get alerts of when this thing happens and different things in our portfolio. But Alex, you've been in this industry for a long time. You're an OG. I remember you participating in, you know, our security token summit event. I think that we did in 2018, I think maybe was the first one we did of those at the LA, not at the LA Convention Center across the street, but the next day was the LA Convention Center event and all that. But you've been a part of this industry for a long time. You know, why don't you give everyone your background and stuff before we just dive into stuff? Rankin and I had some ideas of things to talk about earlier today when we were on another call. So, but first, introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. So hi. I'm Alexander Damsker.
Kevin is saying yay. So.
Hey, Kevin, I haven't talked to you forever. Oh my gosh. I'm a corporate and securities lawyer. Used to work at the SEC in a big firm in their New York and Chicago offices. I headed a practice. I had my own practice. Founded two companies, discovered that being around startups is not the same thing as running a startup. For all those people who think that, you know, oh, it's going to be so easy. I worked with a lot of startups, you know, I'm good. It's so easy to actually run one. It's not. But exited, moved into blockchain in 2016. In order to start a financial marketplace, but it was so early. It was basically just Ethereum and Bitcoin then, and no one was going to wait 9 hours to close a financial transaction. So we ended up just disbanding that. And but I was one of the few people who actually understood operations and regulation at the time. So I ended up helping out a lot of projects. I've spoken internationally. I went into, I added AI and quantum computing in 2019 because those are headed straight for blockchain. And I have been kind of in this area since then. I wrote a book on DeFi and finance that came out this year. And I don't know.
Tell everyone the name of the book and where they can get it.
Understanding DeFi. You can find it on my website, which is underneath my name, or you can get it on Amazon, or I don't know if you can get it in bookstores. Actually, O'Reilly asked me to write it, so you can get it through O'Reilly. I don't know if it's in bookstores because I honestly didn't ask. I don't know. I just wrote it, and I was so happy to be done. I was like, "Yay, I'm finished." Moving on, but
still up to date.
Find out.
So when I
still up to date.
when I Google it, it looks like it's on the O'Reilly website, and it looks like it's available on Amazon also. But go through Alex's website.
And Alex, you're already working on a second edition because of how fast DeFi moves, right?
I do. I have to update it. So I do. I'm required to update. I already have my next set of updates. It's crazy. But to be honest, if you look at the book, most of what's happening in DeFi is nothing at all what DeFi is going to be. So most of this is it's like the kiddie pond junkyard, casino of what DeFi is like. It's actually finance. It's using financial tools. So none of this is financial tools. This is all just it's again, like the people who are creating a lot of these apps have no idea how finance works, just like how a lot of stable coins are being developed by devs, but they don't really understand economics or finance. And the problem is that that's why most of these are kind of crap coins, because they don't really understand that you're really creating an economic system when you're trying to create a stable coin, because that's really what something that competes with fiat actually is. So that's why a lot of these, when they say like, oh, can you help me create this? And it's like, well, first we have to take it all apart. So and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Well, then, you've got kind of this, shit coin, sorry, which is a stable coin, but it's going to fall apart. But you can use it temporarily if you want, but this isn't stable enough. So there's a lot. I mean, we have big problems that we're trying to address in this industry, but that means you have to really bring in these, whole knowledge sets that you're going to address these issues. You can't bring in a dev is not the only person who can address an entire historical context problem, right? If you're trying to address income inequality, you really have to bring in a lot of the people who have previously been looking at this for decades or longer, right? This is a huge
but on the flip side, there is, I think, something important and special when an entrepreneur or somebody who's crazy passionate about something wasn't a part of any kind of legacy system and doesn't know what they don't know, and could be told by folks like us or folks like the people with experience that you're talking about that something is not possible. That actually is possible. It just hasn't been tried in this way, or
Okay, so here's the thing.
I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit because I think you're mostly right.
Idea, right?
Yeah.
Picasso broke a lot of rules, but he understood art first. He was an extremely well-trained artist, right? He understood what he was breaking away from. This is a problem. So I came as an outsider into biotech. I was not in industry or in academia, which is where you have to go in when you create a biotech product, which I didn't know. I wish I had, but I didn't know. But I spent a lot of time, and I had a background in science, right? I had a biology degree. I had a background in it, but I spent a lot of time studying the core areas that pertain to what I did. When I broke rules, I knew the rules first, right? You can't go in breaking rules without understanding why those rules are there. Why are they there? How did they get there? And what happened? I feel like we have a lot of people saying, well, let's just build this because we can, but not understanding how does the system actually work and how can we actually invert it so that it still works, so that something works. You can't just build something, because this is what happened with Celsius, right? You guys remember Celsius originally came on saying, I'm going to bank the unbanked, not realizing that what they were doing, not possible, right? With the system they were doing.
What they did behind the scenes.
They went in a whole different direction.
Isn't it things like Uber though that completely disrupt like other businesses, like the taxi
Have
industry?
yet to make a profit on rides.
Okay, well that's the side effect. Or okay, Airbnb, right? Airbnb, which is disrupting hotels because now you can go
destroying neighborhoods in the process, though.
Well, yeah, okay, but that's
the ramifications of other things. Like
I don't think that. Yeah, you can argue many sides to that.
But you wouldn't. Okay, yeah. There's a point to say for Airbnb, for example. There's a point to say Airbnb said there's a need here. That's one thing, right? There's a need here, and I'm going to try and fill this need. And they did understand exactly how to fill their need, but they're not addressing an entire systemic issue that is a complete inversion of what it's a completely reliant inversion. So here's the problem. When you're dealing with something like money or shelter or education or something like that, you have to understand when you're going to undermine a system that exists, right? However it stands, however crappy it might be, you have to understand how that system works before you decide to tear it down and build something else, right? Safety, security, housing, food, money, things like that. You have to understand what works and what doesn't before you invert it, because you're tearing down some pieces that actually do work, right? So you have to make sure that you shore up those pieces that are working before you like if you're going to tear things down, you need to shore up the things that are working and make sure that you replace them with things that do work too. What happens is that the people who are on the threshold are always the ones that end up falling down and have no support, right? This is what ends up happening. Whenever you decide to disrupt something, which is kind of a crap word in general, right?
I think so too. I actually think it's too soft of a word. I think people who are disrupting things are like, the equivalent of, let's say we're having a meeting right now, and to disrupt the meeting, I'm going to walk into the meeting, I'm going to pick up the trash can in the corner, throw it against the wall, and I'm going to walk out of the meeting, right? You disrupted it. You changed the dynamic. But what I want companies to do, or the way I think we should look at it, is destroying, right? Like you want to set fire to the whole building, right?
Well, I want to improve. I don't want to destroy. I want to improve. I don't want to disrupt for the sake of disrupting. What I want to do is take a system that doesn't work and create something that does. Why do I want stable coins, for example, that do work? I think that they're a human right because of several things. And I'm going to tell you why, even though you didn't ask. I'm going to tell you why. One is that first, when you have a country, right, that has control of capital, the biggest problem that we have is that people are when they're subject to that capital and they need to leave, right? The value of that capital typically loses its value as soon as you cross a border, right? So something that has cross-border value is extremely important. And right now there are very few fiats that maintain value across borders. So a stable coin is one of those things that could maintain value across borders. There are assets that can maintain value across borders, but not many, right? And generally speaking, in order to convert the asset, you require a middleman, and the middleman will convert at the value of your desperation. And that has always been something that has been a crime against humanity, that when people need to flee or escape, the value of their assets decline markedly because of their desperation. And that's one of the best things about Bitcoin, is that the value is maintained across borders, but a stable coin could function in that respect as well, right?
Well, if you can create a stable coin that's not tied to the same issues, right? If it's tied to US dollar, then
it should not be a pegged stable coin. It has to be a completely independent stable coin. And the second thing is because most of the world's economy is tied to the US dollar. And that has a couple of problems. The first is that if anything happens to the US dollar, the entire global economy fails. And we can't have that, right? We can't have the entire world resting on the decisions of one country. That's not safe, right? That's not good business for most of the country. We need to have countries and economies that are stable, even if another country fails, right? There have to be other countries that can pick up the slack. The second is we can't experiment, right? We don't have any experimentation with economics because everybody is really just fixated on trying to work with whatever the value of the dollar is. But what you should be doing is basing your economics on the resources and opportunities within your country, within your jurisdiction, based on whatever resources you have, the people you have, the creativity that you have. Everybody should be free to experiment with economics, but that's not safe unless you have a backstop, right? So the government and the citizens should be free to also put their assets into another currency, like a stable coin, in case something happens. Like if the experiment goes wrong, they should be free to save the value that they've gained and put it into a stable coin. So they should be free to experiment, but with a safety net, right?
Well,
And then
the issue is that when the safety net is working correctly, right, or at least for the average person or for most people, there's very little to no incentive to do those experiments, right? When life is good, things are going good, you believe and trust that your government is doing the right thing, you're prosperous and things are wonderful, there's less people looking at other countries to move to, less people creating products like this whole industry is creating. But when shit hits the fan, right? 2008 happens, the financial crisis happens. People go, you know, that idea for the digital cash, peer-to-peer, thing that we were talking about, we should do that now, right? Because now is the time. And then now we look at, there was some growth and things happened and whatever, but then all of a sudden after COVID and all of the printing of the money and the way they dealt with it and fuck shit up, banks collapse again. And all of a sudden people are much more interested in creating these things. When things are good, there's less experimentation, and the safety net, is unfortunately full of holes, right? Because we don't really trust the person who's created that safety net. I agree in all of those things, right? Like I think that especially for how much is paid in taxes and how much we're taken advantage of as citizens, we should have all sorts of safety nets, right? Like, there should be a stable currency, that our government does, there should be healthcare, or at least some bare minimum of it provided by the government, because again, what's the point of paying in if you're not getting a reward? It's supposed to be like the greatest insurance policy we have is our government backing us, but we don't have it. Or at least we feel we don't have it. In America, we have it better than most of the world. But again, people aren't creating these products and opportunities because the system is pretty good and we have a good safety net, right? The people are creating these because the system has taken advantage of us for years. Even using the example of Uber, right? That you had the response of, hey, that's not even profitable. But at the end of the day, there's somebody who's decided they're making money using their car to drive people around. They're getting paid. If that company went out of business tomorrow, I guarantee you that an alternative would come up that is profitable. They're now such a big company. They probably have so much fat that is making them unprofitable. And that's where the government is times a million, right? Like, people can argue all day long, should this healthcare or that healthcare be taken care of by the government? Well, we could have 1,000%. I always use the example on here of soldiers, right? I don't think, even if you disagree why somebody's going to a war, if you disagree that they should join the military or not, this person is doing something for the rest of their country. They believe they're helping, they are doing something, and the country is putting them in harm's way, and they get back and they have like the worst healthcare of pretty much anyone in the country, and they have to fight to get taken care of, right? That's offensive by everyone's measure in the whole world, whether you believe in free healthcare for everyone or not. But you can point at a million things the government is doing that's a complete waste of money or done so inefficiently that you could easily find the dollars to give every soldier the best healthcare in the world, right? And we have it here in the United States if the government was willing to pay for it, right? But it's not a priority.
So
so where I'm getting at with all of this is that I think you're right that people who are launching these things need to understand. I think you're right that it is a human right to be able to, hold your property and it not be devalued when you're desperate. Similarly to how, capitalism works really well in 99% of situations, but it's probably wrong and bad when, there's a disaster like there was and people are selling a pallet of water for $1,000 or something, right? Like that's taking advantage and that's horrible. But there has to be checks and balances, you're right, in jurisdictions that we choose to be a part of. Again, I think where I'm getting at is that I think you're generally right, but I do also want to poke a little bit and go, people who are in systems that are working the way you're describing don't have much incentive to create new systems. And people who have a legacy of understanding the rules have too great a respect for the rules to change the things that we need to change. And that's why generally people who don't know that rules exist when they first get started or don't realize how entrenched these things are end up being the successful people, right? Like, or at least from an entrepreneurial standpoint and DeFi standpoint, right? Like securities laws exist for certain reasons, right?
Well,
they exist in a way that's not actually protecting people in the way they originally were intended. So
I'm pretty sure PayPal is a good example. If the rules today were there back when PayPal created, PayPal would have never got created. Like there's some of these technologies that they're so innovative. It's the fact that nobody was paying attention to them that they came in and completely disrupted everything. And then now they're grandfathered in because at some point they're too big to shut down, like Bitcoin. Bitcoin at this point.
They're a bank now at this point.
Okay. A few things. First, Uber doesn't make money primarily because they have to spend tons and tons of money on litigation because of those rules, because they didn't care about the rules, but the rules care about them. So it is important to know about the rules. Second,
but they wouldn't exist.
The kind of innovation. So you can't really get around it. There are whole areas that they can't operate in, but there are companies that do follow the rules that actually are making money. And most of it is going to go by the wayside when regulated cars. Actually, what's really interesting is Uber's main argument was that they'll take cars off the road when they operate. But the truth is that they have increased traffic in every area that they operate, because what they've done is added people into traffic instead of removed people. Like, they haven't added carpooling in. What they've done is taken people who weren't driving or weren't circulating in traffic, and they've added more people in. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about Uber because that's a whole separate discussion that I've got armed and ready, but I'm not going to do it because that's not what we're here for. The second part of this is that what I was talking about in terms of innovation is government innovation, because governments aren't able right now to innovate in terms of their economy because there's no safety net, right? If something goes wrong, the entire economy collapses. And this has happened time after time after time. And everybody who's been in an economy that collapses, most recently, you can talk about El Salvador. When your economy collapses, everybody discusses it as the worst week of your life, right? Can you give
me an example of an economy collapsing because the government was trying to innovate?
No. When the economy collapses, and this happens generally speaking when like a peg fails or something like that, right? And it's not because they've innovated. Economies can't innovate because there is no safety net. This is an innovation on having a safety net, right? This is something that does not exist right now, but should exist. Economies can't afford to innovate right now because there's no secondary economy they get to fall back on in case something goes wrong. So the idea is, so what do they all do? They all end up doing the same damn thing, which is pegging to the US dollar, which makes us all reliant on one economy, which is the least safe thing you could possibly do, right? So what should we do? We should have the economies all do whatever works for their economy, whatever works for them. They should be able to innovate, because some of them will create things that are great and some of them will create things that suck. But what happens if they create something that sucks? And many of them will, right? What happens? Then they can transfer their assets into an independent stable coin that operates extra jurisdictionally, right? Yeah. A separate stable coin that operates, that doesn't have anything to do with that particular government, but the government can actually transfer its assets into there so that it saves the value of its assets. It doesn't have to experience loss, but it can still try things with its economy. That is the only way people are going to be able to innovate and grow.
Competition in government and economics is wonderful, but you have to remember,
I want them to innovate. I want them to compete. And here's the best thing.
But you do realize when you're talking about governments, you're talking about elected officials, and not every country in the world, is so lucky as to have the options that Americans have right now.
But
right?
It doesn't matter if they're elected officials or if they're ministers or they're ministers for life or whatever. The point is that they need to be able to innovate. I don't care who's in office. Every country has a minister or someone who is dedicated to the economics of a country. Right. And they would be more inclined.
We would live in a utopia if those type of people were the people that were running and who were incentivized to run. But we live in a world where the elected officials are not the best people to do what you're discussing.
I'm not saying they're elected. Generally speaking, they're appointed, right?
Well, the people who are appointing these people have by default, the world in which we've created for ourselves over time has made it so that the people who are running are not that different from each other, and who are beholden to donors and groups who are legacy systems who don't want change.
What entrepreneur are you trying to stop?
No, I'm not trying. I'm telling you.
From these kind of people.
Here's what I want.
Think tanks get to come up with ideas of what if we try and do this? Does this come up with a healthy, vibrant economy that grows exponentially?
Give me an example of something that came out of a think tank that worked out really well. I think we need entrepreneurs. We need Kevin, right? We need Kevin to create products that make the US dollar less relevant, right? We need you to lead something that creates a digital jurisdiction and creates that alternative. Because I don't think the people you're putting it on are ever going to do it. As much as I would love for them to do it.
You're thinking on the individual level, and I'm thinking on the societal level. Yes, PayPal, etc. Those exist within economies. Those can be you want an economy that foments that kind of growth and development that creates money for people. But I need to have a healthy economy that can create that kind of thing, that also has some sort of circulating money supply that is healthy, that also creates and sustains a middle class. And here's the
mouth to God's ears. I mean, that's what everyone wants.
Is that we have a problem because almost every economic system that is not centrally controlled automatically moves into haves and have-nots, right? And that is happening with Bitcoin. That's happening with everything. That happens. People want to collect because we have a scarcity mindset. And here's the bigger issue. AI, right, is taking over jobs, not LLMs. Everybody, please stop with thinking LLMs are AI. It's barely fucking AI, right? LLMs are not AI. There are so many other AI models that are way better and more important. And that is, Skynet is not coming from an LLM. Okay. Come on now, people. Okay. So.
But the LLM might be their voice.
Whatever. I don't even care about
I'm sorry.
That's a bunch of lawsuits, but it's not actually that's not smart. It doesn't reason. It doesn't. Okay. All right. Happy place on that one. But okay. AI is taking over jobs, right? This is our biggest issue. AI is taking over jobs. And that is the nature of human progress. since we created the wheel, right? All of human progress is using technology to reduce human labor, right? That is what we do. And for everybody who says, but it creates jobs, the nature of progress is for technology to create fewer human jobs than it replaces. One bulldozer replaced 50 human diggers, right? It created one bulldozer operator. That is the nature of jobs. What's a Luddite? A Luddite was someone who hated the looms. Why? Do they intrinsically hate weaving? No. Looms took weavers out of business, right? They didn't hate technology for the sake of technology. They hated losing jobs. This has been an ongoing issue. The problem is jobs are being lost within generations. We used to have at least a generation of attrition. We don't have that now. So we are going to essentially find our own obsolescence within our lifetimes, right? Within our working lives, we will find our own obsolescence. We have to figure out a new economic model within our lifetimes. This is extremely important because AI can either be a curse or like the biggest gift that we have. And I want it to be a gift. How does it become a gift? If we can actually figure out a new economic model where the idea is right now, the amount of resources every human gets in the world is somehow correlated with the amount of work they contribute to that society. I'm a lawyer, I get X amount of money, I get resources from that money. You're a ditch digger, you get X amount of money because of that work that you contribute. And this is how, that's how you get resources. You are a doctor, you're unemployed, you're whatever. That's how you get resources. We have to decouple work contributed from resources allocated. And here's the biggest, most difficult concept for most people. We no longer have a scarcity environment. This is the most important thing. So most things that we have in the world, this whole concept of you must contribute work in order to get resources is based on essentially our caveman mentality. This is like, you must hunt.
But it's also intrinsically, so not to now take this to an even higher, crazier level, right? But what part of that is also our purpose, right? This is the best part. So you are not just decoupling, work from resources. You're right. Decoupling work and time spent on providing from our purpose. So what becomes your purpose?
What becomes
tomorrow?
Your purpose? What is your purpose? If you did not have to work for your resources.
By the way, I just want to give a shout out. Ever since I was trolling you and said, give me one example of something good that came out.
Look at that. Yes, he did.
Kevin is starting to, he's bringing receipts.
Right
Kevin,
on, man.
I know what Alex is saying, and you know what I'm saying. And here we go. There's more, right?
I told you. Okay, but listen, wait. So this part is really important though. So listen, if you're like, listen, I'm not listening. Okay, sorry. I don't mean to be bitchy and like harpy about this, but this is really important because this is a huge philosophic concept, right? We're wired to now believe that the work that we contribute is the major part of who we are and our purpose as people, so much so that when people are unemployed, the suicide rate goes up. Like, look at what happened in South Korea during the Asian crisis. So if we have the amount of resources that we get completely decoupled from what we contribute, what could we contribute as people? Who are we as people? What is our humanity? If we are not required, like if we can contribute whatever is our core value, right? Not what society needs, because what society needs is primarily going to be fulfilled by machines and AI and tools that are already created.
Well, if
what can we contribute? We can clean the oceans. We can explore space. We can be multi-planet species. I mean, think of like how much would crime go down? Because crime often is committed as an act of like desperation.
Only if we can somehow retrain ourselves or create a culture where we have a purpose. Because again, what's the greatest? Why do people join gangs? Why do people do that? Because they don't belong, right? They don't have purpose. They find a group that okay, go.
I got you thinking about
seek out new civilizations to boldly go and explore where no man has gone before.
Wait, say that again. Say that again.
To seek out new civilizations and to boldly go where no man has gone before.
All right.
I'm telling you, like, think of who you could be if you weren't required to be the person that.
I think we all like to think.
Star Trek reference in case you didn't catch
it.
Yes,
we all know. We're all nerds. We're this is nerd essential here. It's okay,
I was gonna make a joke. I was gonna make some joke like, "Oh, that's from," and like say something that's like a totally.
I grew up on this stuff. This all makes sense.
But
here's Star Trek society basically lives.
Look, but here's the thing: is that you started off by talking about inequality and how these things, we don't have the proper safety net. So what makes us believe? Like, I want to believe that we are going to an era of like extreme abundance, and everyone will be able to wake up one morning and go, you know what? That job wasn't me. What I am is a person who likes to make chalk drawings on the cement, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life because it fulfills my heart, and I can draw things. Or I want to go surfing every day. I want to do whatever the thing that I think Rankin and I are on the same page. I just want to go body surfing, right? And then just sit on the sand and stare at the ocean for 9 hours a day.
If I didn't
with my family running around me, and life is wonderful, right? But what I'm saying is that
because you have kids in the family. If I didn't have kids in the family, I'd absolutely be body surfing right now.
Don't project those feelings onto me. But
that's
right,
responsibility
that's exactly what we want. That's what I want, right? And I hope that we move into that utopia. And I think that the vast majority of the world could live in a world like that if things work out exactly the way we want it to work out. But at the end of the day, a lot of people, we've been raised, again, that our profession is our purpose. Being a dad is my purpose. Being a mom is my purpose. Being a lawyer is my purpose. Whatever it is to you, that's your purpose. That purpose may no longer be rewarding or available to you in the future that you're describing. And 1,000,000%, the economy needs to be fixed for it. But culturally, it's probably even a bigger issue because who knows, right? I like to think that I'm doing exactly what I would be doing if money was no object. But most of what I'm doing may not be around if algorithms, if startups won't exist and things don't change.
I don't think it's true that startups won't exist, though.
I don't think so either. But I'm extrapolating.
There was a title that you put on this on LinkedIn that are meme coins legal?
Yeah, that's what we were going to talk about. We're only 45 minutes.
Talk about that. Sorry, I know this was a tangent, but it's fun, right? And I think
it is.
No. So I mean, it brings up the thing, arbitrary value, right? Like, what is value in a world where AI does everything and we're on a beach? And now, I don't like meme coins. Like, they have no utility. They're fictional. They're generated out there. Some people treat them as like, maybe this is our future currency, though. I have no clue. Are they even legal? Well, I think I'm sorry to transition, but like, you put that was on the title, and I'm like, curious.
I think you had mentioned that Alex was talking about meme coins somewhere, and so we thought, we should talk about this and talk about meme coins. But
I was listening to one of your spaces, Alex, and you mentioned there's a legal way to do meme coins and an illegal way to do meme coins. And we were talking to one of our somebody that we know about meme coins, and we're like, well, apparently Alex has this concept as to what's legal and what's not.
So again, not legal advice or anything like that, but there's really kind of only a couple of constructs. So moving away from our utopian future, and
this is a part of it.
Maybe that is utopia future.
It is really
the quote, memes are money.
Yeah, I mean, it is important, I think, for us to really discuss what what our economy is going to be in the future, mostly because it's coming here whether we like it or not, right? It's coming. So we can decide it's too hard to discuss or whatever if we want, but the point is someone is going to create this future, and it can be us, like we can think about it and create it knowingly, or we can just exist in someone else's decision, right? And I hate that crap. So personally, I always go for let's plan it. Let's be part of, the design, as opposed to being part of someone else's de facto decision. Because remember, not making a decision is also a decision. And I hate that, so I always want to, move in knowingly. So that's just me. Anyway.
So
meme coins.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Elon Musk said something like to that nature, and I'm not sure exactly how he said it, but he basically said it's the most unanticipated thing that you expect to happen that actually ends up happening, that ends up like netting in this result. The most ironic thing, like something like Doge maybe becoming a currency someday. It's
well, Doge can't be. It doesn't have the hallmarks of currency. It can't be a currency. There is a use case for it, and no one's.
Why not? It's inflationary, just like
no. So currencies are required, just like they have to have tools that put them within a band, right? Of like within a narrow range of value. So the range, I guess, depending on whose value it is, right, can be wider or narrower. Ours is within 2%. I guess now it's within 3%. But which means the value of our dollar ranges between $1.03 and 97 cents. But a currency is required to stay within a band.
That depends on who's reporting it.
Yeah, that's actually within the definitions of a currency.
Bitcoin has a fixed supply. As far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin supply stays, and it's
no. You don't want a fixed supply. That's not. Bitcoin cannot be a currency. It is an asset. So understanding the difference between assets and currencies, which are opposites, right, is a really important concept. And I think a lot of people within this space don't understand the difference and how things. Like basically, just because you can buy something with an asset doesn't mean that it's a currency.
I would argue, though, that is a function of the depth of liquidity, because the deeper the market is, the deeper liquidity is. You have to have a depth of liquidity for somebody to be able to sell something off and not move the price. The deeper
I think the lines can be blurred now that we live in the future, right? When we're coming up with these definitions. Right. Well, but we do, right? Today, if you can create a simple app that transfers the value of Bitcoin between two people or gold or something else, doesn't have to be Bitcoin, right? And it's not necessarily a currency in the way that you just described it, but it can be used as one, and people can barter with it, work with it, and use it in a way they couldn't before because it wasn't efficient. And so currency created efficiencies. We live in a world where it could be.
This is how that works, right? So that's having transactional value is possible, but this is how this works, right? So let's say I buy a computer. If I buy a computer with something that's a currency like cash, my main concerns are what we call transactional risk. Like, is the computer what I want? Does it do what I want? Is it what the person said it was? And their concern is, do I have the money that I say that I have, and am I going to get, am I going to pass it over, right? When at the close, right? So if I buy it with something that is an asset, say Bitcoin or Apple stock, then we have a second layer of asset concerns, right? So not only do I have transactional risk, which is the computer what I want, but we have asset risk, which is the person selling the computer has the concern also of, well, what if the value of the Apple stock goes down? Then did I sell it for too little? If the Bitcoin goes down, did I sell it for too little? And then if the Bitcoin goes up or the Apple stock goes up, then my concern is, oh, did I pay too much? Am I losing
that
upside?
exists with currency.
It's not the same thing. And
as the markets the markets get more efficient, it is
currency risk and transactional risk are different. That's how you know if you have an asset or a
currency. There's that same currency risk in countries that have failing currencies, like
Right.
Yes,
It's
and-
liquidity.
and-
It's an issue of liquidity.
and-
Those
I
are
think it's a liquidity and volatility issue, not a currency commodity issue.
no.
And I think
those-
the reason I'll give you an example of you buy a car, the second you drive it off the lot, it's lost a bunch of value. Did you overpay for
but
that car?
depreciation is different from asset risk because assets go up and down. The volatility of assets are built in there in order to gain value, right? So assets, you gain value.
Hold on. I would say all values. I would say all the values derived from the loss of purchasing power of the dollar over time. Like if you go look at the growth of the money supply and the growth of the stock market, it's absolutely correlation. There's correlation there between the valuation of the dollar over time. And the same thing with real estate. Everything goes up in price because of appreciation from the debasement of currency.
So the value of the asset does not go up because of the depreciation of the power. That is not
that's one of the big factors. It might not be the only factor. It's I can tell you like the housing market.
The market may value an asset more at a given time because they're moving out of a particular currency. So more people are purchasing it at some time. But the intrinsic value, there are factors that tell you, depending on the asset, there are some intrinsic
You offended David. He just ran away.
If you had a silver quarter back in 1954, you could buy a hamburger with a silver quarter. If you had a silver quarter in the silver value of today's dollar value of silver, you could still buy the same hamburger with the silver quarter in value of silver. The reason why the quarter has gone up in value is because we've lost value of our currency through debasement. Appreciation is
still worth that quarter. If you use it as transactional value, that quarter is still only worth 25 cents. You'd have to
because they don't recognize the silver value. Because they don't recognize the silver value.
You'd have to melt it down as an asset. You'd have to use it for its silver. You don't use it as a quarter. You use it as silver, as an asset in order to see the change.
So in David's example, the silver is less volatile and better money than the dollar.
I'm not arguing the value of the dollar versus value of the different assets, right? What I'm talking about is the difference of currency
between a currency and an asset.
Right. That's all I'm talking about. Is the difference in currency versus difference in assets.
I think to be fair, I always say this, and I didn't say this today. So Alex, just so you know, we tend to argue with people we agree with the most. And I think you're absolutely right. But the all that this argument is solidifying to me, and what it's saying to me is that the lines are very, very blurred now. And just because something's a currency doesn't mean that it's not volatile, and just because something's an asset doesn't mean it couldn't be transacted easier and better. And I think that the assets could be a currency and vice versa, and there's right, like to a Venezuelan, or let's say you're from I remember there was an interesting thing. Argentina has had their currency collapse a bunch of times. A dollar to an Argentinian might have been an asset, not really a currency, right? But what was interesting is that the value, there was a moment when Bitcoin was significantly less than it had been previously from an all-time high. But if you put the chart up against the cost of Bitcoin to the Argentinian, I think it's peso or dollar, whatever it is, Argentinian money to Bitcoin, and you watch the chart, when the Argentinian money collapsed to the price of Bitcoin, Bitcoin was at an all-time high when it was at a low for us, according to their dollar standard or their currency standard. And so some of these things are interchangeable depending on
I'm just going to say that know your risk, know the risk that you're facing, and wherever you're putting your value, know the risk. If you're choosing to transact,
you started by saying you want to have a choice, right? You choose.
You have to have a choice to know the risk.
Right?
And I think that if things are competing properly, which is one of the reasons why I wanted an economy to compete, I still want an economy to compete with an economic fiat to compete against a stable coin. If they're both doing their jobs very well, I want them to compete for the assets of the population, right? That is the ideal scenario, is that they're not just the natural passive receptacle and nobody has a choice, right? I want fiat to compete for citizen, for the right to be the transactional value for citizens. And if they're not doing the best job, then I want the stable coin to be like, no, do all of your business in stable coins, right? Like now we're starting to see, the petro yuan, right, is actually like, it's not necessarily gaining traction, but there are countries that are really considering, and a few that are actually using the petro yuan, right? Which people don't really understand what the petrodollar is. It's basically a way to use the dollar outside of the US, and it's an alternate form of the dollar. But what does this really mean? It's a way to it's decreasing the power of the dollar against the yuan. And it's primarily in these BRICS countries, I guess. What does it really mean? It really means that BRICS is trying to form this entity that has a circular economy, a full circle economy within itself that is independent of the US dollar. And if that actually completes, which it can, right? Will it? I don't know, but it can complete it. If it actually does complete it, then we have an actual trading power that's competitive to ours.
Just as corrupt and horrible too.
Does that matter?
It's not worse. It does matter. It does matter, because what we want to do, the utopia that you discussed, and I think the thing that we all want in the world is a fair markets, right? And fair markets, as much as we try to talk about them in the United States, and maybe they exist better here than other places, don't really exist because of all the corruption, right? The way insurance companies and things are regulated in the United States, and the way banks are regulated in the United States, make it so it's hard to compete, make it so there's a monopoly, make it so there is an actual real competition, right? So that when DeFi products launch and when people launch, there's walls up to stifle innovation instead of help create, right? And the people who benefit the most, right? The people who benefit the most from the oil stuff, from our economy and things like that, are also the greatest, if we want to talk about utopias, they're also the greatest war profiteers in the history of the world, right? So we're going, hey, this is a great thing because at least it's competition to the dollar, but it's competition from another group that's just as unjust, just as corrupt, and just as horrible, if not more, than the United States. So, right, it's great. More competition is good. We want our government to compete for us. I don't see a lot of
DeFi as competition now. I don't see it, because most of these stablecoins are pegging themselves to the dollar.
I know it's not really competition,
the worst
but
way to do it. That's the easiest way.
It might be competition. It might be competition to legacy banks and financial institutions and things like that. Which, worst case scenario, right? What we want from all of these fintech companies who are creating better products is at minimum for the current banks and institutions to figure out how to lower their margins, figure out how to be more efficient, and provide us better services and better.
The banks are the worst. The biggest thing about this is that all the regulation that's out right now on the tables that I can tell is all the regulation loves the peg to the dollar.
Well, that's
stable coins, because they're basically.
I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something that actually is defending the government for once. It is their job to make the U.S. as strong as possible. I think they're stinking at it. They're really fucking it up. They're not doing a good job at that. So I do have to qualify what I'm about to say. But if their job is to make our country the greatest country in the world, or to be the greatest superpower, to be the best it can be, then they do want our currency to be the best currency in the world too. And so I understand the reasoning. It's like what you were saying earlier. Do I know why certain laws exist? Why are investor protections there? Yes, I understand why they exist. In this day and age, are they regulated properly? And did they create the proper investor protections? Absolutely not. They don't protect anyone other than people who are already wealthy in protecting their wealth. Right? That's not the reason that they exist. Now what they evolved into, right?
But what I was saying is that the legislation right now, so all of it loves the pegged dollar because it's alternate dollars, right? But and all the legislation right now only permits stable coins that are pegged to the dollar, and they have to be produced by banks, essentially. So essentially, the only way that you get stable coins is they're basically bank derived stable coins, right?
Which
now,
is
here's the
de
biggest
facto a
problem.
CBDC without being a CBDC.
Exactly. And the biggest issue with that is that the banks on top of that, right? So these banks are supposed to be pegging them. And of course, they're going to be their own custodians. So that is a whole other web.
What can go wrong?
Of problem. Not only that, there's no clear signal in here that they're the custodianship that they can get, right? Because they're very good at getting self-exclusion from laws, right? So theoretically, they should have a separate pool of custodianship for whatever they hold outside of whatever deposits they have. But it seems like they could very easily say, well, it's like we're custodying these dollars, but as long as we're custodying them and we know how long, if they're locked up, for example, could we use them? What if they end up with a reserve because they have the right to get from the Fed? They request from the Fed. Every single request of loan that they've had from the Fed has been accepted. The Fed has never denied a bank an overnight loan. So it's theoretical that they could be custodians, paid for as custodians, and have like no dollars as a custodian.
That's what they do already. So essentially what you're saying is they're going to say it's a stable coin, but just keep doing exactly what they're already doing.
There's nothing there. And, and they're just going to keep circulating that money. And so, it's just, and once again, we're going to have the same damn thing where they're going to loan it out and they're going to be doing the exact same thing they always do, which is they're basically trading maturity rates is what they're doing, but they're shit at it because they keep failing. Right.
You know what,
and so
Alex,
what's going to happen?
Alex, I think you're right. I think we should start a bank. That's what you're pitching us right now, right?
Like the Bank of Dave kind of thing. Yeah, I'm just, I just, I always feel like walking up to them and going, like, I'm better at this than you because I haven't declared bankruptcy. So give me money because I'm better at this.
Or maybe they would say, well, then you haven't played the game properly.
They get them, like, we've literally been doing Graham Leach Bliley, like, every single time. Then what do? They pull themselves out into an exception because they've got very good lobbies, and then then a collapse happens, and then we'd have another law, and then they pull themselves out in exceptions, and then a collapse happens, and then we do another law. And this freaking happens every single time. I mean, Glass-Steagall was the latest, and then they pulled themselves out, and then another freaking collapse happens, right? Like, it just happens over and over again. I really hate it. And I see this happening. And when the stable coins are pegged to the dollar and they're like, oh, well, let's just make the banks do it. And I'm like, nobody sees it.
But see, this is where I was going with what you were saying earlier about, governments should feel free to and should innovate and should be encouraging it. I think I think that the governments should be encouraging it by, doing things like, UK, if you're in the UK, you think they're not doing enough. But compared to the United States, I just spent time in London and I was surprised that the people who run the Bank of England were there talking about the sandbox they created where, you can, and all these things they're trying to do to help foster innovation. I think what governments should do is, for many reasons, but, one big one is there's no greater creator of jobs, right, than startups and small businesses. So they should be hoping that all of us start new businesses, right, create jobs in this country and not from other places. And, but anyway, aside from that, they should be creating regulation that makes it so that, in my opinion, makes it more free to transact and do things. But you know what? You're scared that bad things will happen. How about you rebalance, right? fine, make it stricter and harsher penalties for people who commit fraud, for people who take advantage of people. Fine, if that's what it takes, right? Like, you know, okay, I'm not going to go down that other. I was going to go down a different political rabbit hole.
I feel it.
But the
actually,
whole thing
go to jail when they commit fraud or something like that.
Well, the thing is there's been so many times where legitimate companies have broken securities laws or interpretations of securities laws, where the company has been shut down, where everyone who was supposed to be protected was actually basically lost all their value and lost a lot of money, and in the end were hurt and penalized because someone else broke a rule. But not a single person was lied to, not a single person was defrauded. In the end, after the SEC and the government, the people, nobody goes to jail because also nobody was defrauded. They might have to pay penalties, which again are paid out of the companies where the people should have received it. And any sane person taking a step back, looking at what happened, would go, oh, what a shitty situation, you know, and this isn't the way it should have been. Times hundreds of companies. And then there are a few cases where people used rules and laws to obfuscate and hide things and actually commit fraud to billions of dollars, right? Like, you know, I don't want to, like FTX, which is, you know, confirmed, right? And those people were considered by most to be complying, right? So obviously the whole playing field is fucked, but the people who are penalized the absolute most are the people who, like us, don't want to break any rules and laws. Like, so it's why so many people we know in our industry leave the country. But I think the opportunity in that is that, especially amongst younger people basically our age and lower, going to another country or going to another state or going to a different jurisdiction isn't as big of a deal as it was when we were kids. You know, think about like your friends who would be like, I'm moving to Canada if this person's elected, or, you know, something like that. Everybody talks that game, but only in recent years, especially in the crypto space, yet people are actually moving because they disagree. But it's also because of this age of the internet where I can know exactly, like if I look up Japan and an address, I can walk around on Google Street Maps, know exactly where I'm going to eat breakfast every morning, know the ramen place I'm going to eat dinner at, know what school I'm going to go to, know what school my kids are going to go to. Like, there's no uncertainty in moving anymore or going somewhere anymore. There is some, but like not any more uncertainty that exists being here. I could be laid off tomorrow by having a great job and have it here too. And so the beauty of that is that what you were discussing in terms of creating alternatives and things like that might not exist thanks to a government or a financial institution, might exist in some kind of digital jurisdiction, in a DAO, in, you know, Kevin said he's a fan of, what did he say? I'm a fan of crypto think tanks, right? That, right?
As long as you continue to pay your taxes, yes.
Look, in the jurisdiction you're in, you live there, you choose to live there. And more every day, I think it's more of a choice, right? For us, it feels luxurious, right? Because we are, even if we're not, you know, the wealthiest people on earth, we're Americans. And we're in this certain class of people where we can say this and it is a luxury. We're not super poor, just scrounging to feed ourselves and go, hey, just go to another country, bro. Like, that's a luxury of an American, and it's a luxury of someone who can afford to as an American.
Yeah.
But it's becoming more and more available to more people around the world. And as Americans go to other countries, those other countries, you know, things start balancing out. And it might scare certain people who want America to be a superpower and be a special place and want our currency to be whatever. But in general, I think the great benefit of this is that we will have those options that you're talking about. There will be other currencies. And I think the adoption, similar to every internet thing, right? And I'll do this quick, and then I know we'll have to wrap up because we're over time, but like, early days of the internet, right? I remember being in my dad's auto parts shop wanting to fix up my 1967 Ford Fairlane and finding a dude on eBay that had the aluminum strips from the side of the car that I really wanted, because everybody else was taking those strips off and painting a line instead. And I was like, fuck that, I want the real strips. So I found a dude on eBay selling them. I needed to send him, this is like right when eBay launched, I needed to send him a money order for the money, because for the parts, and when he received it, he would send me the parts. That was like how you used eBay back then. because you couldn't trust a check because my check might not clear or it might bounce. So I went to the post office. I bought a money order. I sent him the thing. And I could have probably had recourse and figured it out over a long period of time. But the dude never sent me the parts. I never got it. I was a 15-year-old or 16-year-old fixing this car. I just never dealt with it, right? But then, and people talked about back then, see, this is the reason why nobody's going to buy things on the internet. Only weirdos and crazy people like you are going to buy things on the internet. This is not normal.
Figured it out, though?
Then when PayPal launched and everything else.
Porn. They took it from porn. Porn figured it out.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. They did. They figured out parts of it, right? And they
figured out and credit cards,
streaming and credit cards and all these things. But then what I'm saying is that was 25 years ago. That was 25 years ago. Actually more, 25, 26 years ago. Then we had PayPal and Amazon. You start buying things on the internet. Then all of a sudden we went into this world where nobody's going to buy anything on the internet to, Amazon Prime, where everyone for next day shipping or 2-day shipping are subscribing to a thing and bugging their houses with devices so that they could just say, Alexa, send me this shit, right? Like it went from that to that so quickly. But even in that period of time, people were starting to talk about, I think we're going to start selling movies on the internet. We're going to go from Netflix sending DVDs to actually watching them on the internet. And everyone, and I'm talking about 10 years ago, most people believed there's no chance in hell that's going to be a real thing because watching a movie on your laptop, the speakers stink. There's not good sound quality. It's pixelated. Streaming sucks. The quality isn't good. To all of a sudden that's real. Then, nobody's going to buy these meme coins and Bitcoin and things like that because it's happening. Each one of those cycles went from 10 years to 5 years to 2 years to 1 year. And now the cycle is so quick that people have their Cash App, have Venmo, and within it, they have a balance of their US dollar. They have a balance in their Bitcoin. And of course, not your keys, not your cheese, all that stuff, whatever. You can argue it all day long. But they literally have Bitcoin in an app. And people are doing what you are saying, not with like an alternative stable coin yet, but they might. But they're doing it with Bitcoin. And it might be a small group of people compared to the rest of the world, but these cycles happen so fast. And whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or some stable coin, CBDC, whatever the hell it is, people are going to start having their apps that they share with their friends that they trade money with and get paid in. They'll instantly start swapping for different things if they stop trusting it, and it's going to just become the norm. And whether we want it or not, the way user experience and the cycles of the internet are changing. Just like, we joke, nobody starts an internet company anymore. Like nobody uses the words, I'm starting an internet company, because that's absurd. Every company is an internet company. Just like in a few years, nobody's going to talk about starting something on the blockchain, and it won't matter if they're starting a biotech company out of their garage because now the world is small and they can share data differently, or Rankin starting a real estate company, or you starting a new law firm. It will just be like, of course you're going to use the blockchain because it's going to be like the internet. There's going to be different ones. There's going to be different programming languages. There's going to be different versions of it and interfaces to it. But everyone's going to be using some version of these things, right? And I feel like we're preaching to the choir and we're arguing amongst ourselves, but I think all of these things are true, right? And it's just
so you're going to start using
something
interesting. Is that what you're telling me?
Me? Yeah, meme coins and Bitcoin are not the same, by the way.
Yeah, before we went live,
Bitcoin is the first meme that was out there.
But there is, I do think that the cycle of introducing new things is definitely shorter, especially because, and this is a good and a bad thing. Like I see the point of why regulators in general are concerned. It's like the uptake is so fast that they're like, wait, we need to know what the risks are, and the cons come fast, right? Because the ideas come fast, the money comes fast, the cons come fast, and retail investors especially, they're getting involved, but they're not educated. And this is a huge risk, mostly because this is another thing though that I put at the blame of the government because of public education so bad that we don't have financial education, like all the really important stuff that screws up your life if you don't know it. Like, you don't learn about money or credit or sex or relationships, like all the stuff that it screws up your life totally, like civil liberties and stuff like that. Like, all the stuff that like, if look, if I don't know how high a building is and I can't use geometry properly to measure the height from a distance, like my life is not fucked. Right. But if I screw up my credit, my life could be fucked, or I get pregnant when I'm 12, like my life is fucked. So I feel like the really important thing should be in that education somewhere, but it's really not. And they leave it to parents. But the problem is parents don't know. And that is, like I spend a lot of time trying to teach people finance just because they're so like, it's hard to properly assess risk when you can't spot it. You don't know where the risk is, and you don't know where you are in terms of risk assessment. So it's really hard for people to understand how likely things are, where things are. That is why I think the regulatory agencies get so scared. They get so like. The other thing is that the tokens work so differently than stock is stock the day it was born to the day it dies. Money is money from the day it's born till the day it dies. These things are so different than they were. A token is one thing to one person, but it changes. It could be like it could be something that works as a security. It could work as something that's like a bond. It could work as something that's like a transactional fee. It could work as it could work on so many different things, 7 different things, right? Simultaneously. So it's
doing the job of educating people, right? And
what?
if maybe it's doing the job that hasn't been done properly in educating people, because there is something to, your friends getting involved in this world and a year later them being financial wizards compared to what they were before, compared to what any of us were growing up, right? Like all of a sudden, and nothing here is novel. And what I will say is the novelty here is the fact that we're able to participate and do these things that bankers and institutions and people do all day long, just might be under a different name and without the middleman, right?
Well, but the problem is the regulatory system doesn't work. None of the systems. What really happens is that all the regulators actually need to have to like examine per transaction. And that's not efficient or even possible. So, but beyond that, they might not have the resources to learn, right? Like, so you can learn as long as you have enough resources to get the education before you lose all your money.
Talk about technology, though. They do have the ability to monitor and track and look at every single transaction. They don't understand, but they can, once they do, they can build things that create flags and do things in a way that they can't do with the current system, right? Like if 2 drug lords decide to trade $10 million in suitcases full of gold, right, and do something, the government has no way of doing that unless they have boots on the ground, intelligence, whatever stuff. In this new modern world, they can start flagging things. When there's tons of volume going through something, they go, ooh, somebody has to go look at that and make sure it's not a scam or not a this or not a that. The thing is, they have the ability to actually find and prosecute scammers versus find and prosecute people who are building new innovative things, but they're spending time on that, and the scammers are falling through the cracks. And then we create this meme of crypto is illegal, crypto is bad, crypto is only for criminals, right? And it perpetuates. We have to go. We're way over time. But everybody, Damsker.com for Alex. Get her book. Congratulations. It's really cool that O'Reilly published it. Yeah. Kevin, I think, said, that's a big honor. That's legit. What did he say? O'Reilly. He said that's prestigious. There we go. So, congratulations on that. That's really, really awesome.
Thank you.
And we will definitely have you back. I'm sorry it took so long to have you on this. We have calls about other topics and things like that. So my brain just, these
we're
things.
Sorry to those, and we're
I
sorry
treat
to those
all.
that can get their meme coin questions asked.
Yeah, I know, everybody's like, but are they legal?
Hey, you know what? I'll answer
Probably
all
not.
the questions. Here's the beauty
Wait till the
of,
next episode.
crypto questions. Here's the beauty in crypto related questions. You ask 5 lawyers, they'll give you 10 different answers. So it doesn't, if Alex said this is the path to maybe the most optimal legal path, it still doesn't matter because you ask another lawyer, they'll give you a different answer. And at the end of the day, the answer to all of it is it depends. Because it depends on the day, it depends
like
where you are in the world,
like
it depends what button you push at what time and when. Like there's so many factors that we're not going to answer the questions properly here. But anyway, I'm semi joking, but kind of serious.
And on that note, lawyers suck.
Thank you so much. I mean, you don't create the world, the laws and world in which you live in. Some do, but you know, you need a wingman or wingwoman to navigate through certain challenges, right? And that's what lawyers do. So you know, you can hate on them, but they're necessary in our world. And most of them are good people, just like everything else, right? But Alex, any last words where people can follow you, whatever, before we finish up?
You can find me on X at Alex Damsker. I'm on there. I have got a pitch space every Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but every Sunday I've got investors and stuff on there, and you get education. Last week we talked about pricing. It's for all industries. So anybody who's interested, you're welcome to come, and people have gotten funded. So please come in there. And it's really just about education and practicing how to build relationships with investors and potential co-founders if you don't know anyone. So come join. And I do a lot of education stuff, but also just, you know, come find me on damsker.com. Oh, and sign up for my newsletter.
Yeah, and sign up for and after you sign up for hers, make sure you're signed up for ours if you haven't already. DGB.vc. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Alex, for your time.
My pleasure.
We will see you again soon, and thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks very much.